and then to pay down those utilities and contracted services as well. And we've held those flat. Typically, we would expect an increase from year to year in those services, but by allowing the foundation to implement them, we're hoping that they'll be able to reduce some of those expenses, and therefore we're holding them flat throughout the agreement. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Seal.
Who else applied?
The Florida Dream Center was the other entity that applied.
Okay. And did you do it as a traditional RFP, or was it just a letter of interest?
There's a letter of interest process.
So you targeted who it was sent to?
No, it's blasted out to the applicable entities with those types of services. So Demand Star, I believe, is the name of the list that it's blasted out to.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of, I mean, they're going to operate and manage and lease the remaining 40% that's still left to be leased.
Mm-hmm.
Who will determine the lease rates? Who will determine which partners there get an increase? I mean, this is a very new venture for us, so I have...
Indeed it is. We would be asking them to handle those responsibilities, but we would have the ability to manage that process through the annual business plan submittal.
And what kind of, I looked up both the St. Petersburg Group and the St. Petersburg Foundation. I don't see that they do this type of business already, as far as leasing and managing a property.
They don't have experience maintaining a facility of that nature. We've discussed this at length with the Department of Administrative Services, and certainly prepared to assist them throughout that process. And we'll still have eyes on the facility to ensure that it is being properly maintained, and therefore not leaving anything unaddressed that might lead to a later, more significant capital expenditure.
And tell me more about why they have the ability to do the philanthropic naming rights. That was not mentioned anywhere. I just found it as an attachment. Explain to me more about that, because I do have, this is also setting precedent for the future, and I have some real issues with that.
Certainly. And during our research process for the strategic plan, one of the facilities we looked at was the University Area CDC over in Hillsborough. So we took a field trip over there, and they had a naming rights aspect there. And I think that's where the idea first came into our head. But as you enter the facility, I think there's different bricks and things like that people can purchase as a donation to the facility and the operations. Not necessarily a huge moneymaker per se for a facility like that, but it is a good way to engage donors and to encourage, to develop those relationships with private donors, to allow them to feel a part of the process, and in that fundraising aspect, develop that long-term relationship and hopefully secure additional funds. And
I mean, are we going? I read through the policy, which we did many years ago, and we really have not used it much. Will we be approving the plan that they decide to put into place? And because it's not clear from this, it sounds like it goes to county administration and a business plan every year, but because we're getting into naming rights, I have some real issues on that.
And Commissioner, if you look in the agreement under paragraph 7, it speaks specifically to the naming rights and says that the naming rights policy that may be developed consistent with the county's policy would be approved by the county administrator.
But I think it should be approved by the county commission.
I believe they have to. I think the agreement speaks to they have to abide by our naming rights policy, which means that would come before the Board of County Commissioners for approval via resolution.
I see the attorney shaking her head one way, so.
The lease agreement itself says the plan must be submitted to the county administrator for approval.
Correct. So that's.
Amend the language.
So I think,
I just think this opens a door that I'm not sure we really are going to see that much money from it, but it opens a door for every single friends group to be coming up and then saying, I'm going to have a plan and I'm going to do naming rights, when I think it needs to stay vested with us, and it should be our plan.
Certainly.
and our benefit.
I think
Because we're putting general fund monies into this building.
there'd be a difference between, I don't want to be up here approving the size and shape of a brick program, but the name of the building, absolutely. If we're going that far, then that,
Well, we wouldn't do that, but they were talking about like rooms or things like that
Yeah.
within it, a computer lab or, whatever. Not that that's being proposed, but but this does open the door to that. If you would be more comfortable us modifying this to be to the commission, that's fine with us from a
I
staff
think to
standpoint.
modify it so that it has, can we just take this out for the time being and see what they came back to us as a plan? Because I see, thank you very much, shaking the head out in the audience. It's just a path that I don't know whether we really want to
Fair
open
enough.
at the present
We
time.
need to look at our policy anyway.
Yes, we do. We haven't spent some time on that for a while.
Right.
Thank you.
further questions?
Yeah,
Follow
Mr.
up.
Eggers?
yeah, I've been struggling with it only from the perspective of what's the value-added service that they're gonna be providing
That we can't do.
that we can't do. I mean, I just was trying to get a sense of why this, again, I'm not saying anything against the group. I'm just trying to understand where this came from and why this is being inserted.
Well, I think primarily there is a strong connection between the St. Petersburg Foundation and some of the other larger foundations in the area. So this is a effort to sort of maximize that public-private partnership. They have a lot of relationships with other nonprofits in the area, and we think that the strengths that they bring, the connections to the private sector, the connections to the other nonprofits and foundations, et cetera, allow an ability to act, to manage the facility in the way that we're not currently capable of doing. And it's not necessarily that I would say we can't. We don't have full-time employees designated toward that facility. This provides us some flexibility to bring on staffing to more maximize operations there at the facility, number one. But we think it's a model that in the long term can really get the private sector engaged from a fundraising perspective. There's a lot of interest in facilities like this. HUD actually, 4 of the big categories from our mission statement came straight from an initiative by HUD. They're called Envision Centers, and for HUD, it's sort of a one-stop shop that is, in their case, it's a strategy to reduce demand for affordable housing. So this is, in our way, just investing in our residents, providing them the services they need to help alleviate some of the challenges they may face. And by bringing in a private sector partner like that, we just think that it can, get folks in the giving community engaged, develop those relationships, and again, provide the resources that we're not providing with FDEs right now, but would be able to.
Okay, so maybe then you could look at, just explain I'm looking at the pro forma, I'm looking at vendor programmatic expenses, I'm looking at, I know utilities cost, contracted services cost, and then handyman cost. So there's 3, if you can maybe explain what that might help me understand.
So
this
those are
model.
currently expenses that the county is already paying. So those amounts are set through historical expenses for the facility. So the contracted services include, your pest control, your maintenance, et cetera, as well as the utilities, the electricity, and so on. The labor aspect, so our staff, those numbers are based on what it's cost us using our own staff, and essentially we'd be transitioning that to the foundation.
Okay, I'm not getting it, so I'm just not understanding what we're trying to do here. You're
Yeah,
not
I
bringing it
think
in
that-
for a landing for me.
If I may, Commissioner Tamar Monte, Assistant County Administrator, the vision behind this is from the beginning, your vision was to activate that space as a community center, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day if needed. For the county to manage that facility in that manner is just not possible. We can maximize the resources that we have, by creating partnership with someone like the one that we are recommending, not only they can bring that to the table, but they can identify resources that are available to the community. And they can tap into those resources so we can, as partner like the YMCA, that currently has programs that are limited, potentially we can find other resources that we can bring to the table. So it's not that we're not able to do that as the county. We can, but the model of running the facility as a community center where the community, if they want to have a quinceañera on the weekend, they can. It's better managed by facility in this manner. And we're seeing that in other counties. Hillsborough County, we went to see that facility. So it's a model that has been tested by other municipalities, and we are recommending that because I believe. Now, remember, even if we test this, Commissioner, and in 3 years from now, we said that model didn't work. So what's the loss of testing this in that facility? We're not going to lose anything. The service that we currently provide will remain in that facility. This is an opportunity to maximize that in a way that we have not seen before. So I ask that we give the model a chance so we can test it for the next 3 years. And then we step back and decide whether we have to operate the facility in a different manner.
How are they being funded? How is their efforts being paid for? What is, tell me.
Sure, the pro forma includes different sources of funding. One of those is the CR8, as is in the changes to the work plan in the tune of $250,000. They actually have, from the beginning, they get it. We want them to go out and identify other partners that they can bring to the table, and they did with the Foundation of Tampa Bay, where they committed $210,000. So the model has been funded for a variety of sources, and current investment that the county makes out of the GOF, General Operating Fund, when it comes to utilities and things like that. So it's a combination of different sources of funding, but I think at the end of the day, Commissioner, if you look the way the model is set up, is year one, the CR8 is investing, $250,000, and then it goes down in year two, and then in year three. The model is designed for us to make that facility sustainable and reduce the demand on the CR8 in the county if it's needed. So that's the logic behind that with the model that we put in place. So what I ask you is that let's test it. The facility, we have operated the facility now for several years, and the demand of the community, when we went through the strategic plan, it was very obvious. The community wanted more out of that facility. This gives us an opportunity to do that.
Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of look at this project like the joint project that was the City of St. Petersburg Library System along with the Y in Childs Park. And then they brought in several other entities to provide different services and different components. And the rental payment or the fees that persons paid to participate in those other programs is what helped to pay for the rent, if you will, for that facility. My concern is I just don't want the Lealman Exchange Center to lose its identity as it relates to why it was brought about in the first place for the residents. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes when we're looking at partnerships or naming rights, this is nothing negative, but when we're looking at those naming rights, we do look at the dollars that those naming rights bring, but then what does that naming right bring along with it? And I don't want to lose that from a neighborhood perspective, because Lealman, for so many years, really needed a lot of help. And the county, prior to my being elected, did a really good job. You all have done a magnificent job in bringing up Lealman based on resources, based on infrastructure, based on needs of the community, because that community is so diverse, and putting in that human infrastructure as well that's needed in that community in order to bring them up. So I just have a few concerns there, because I've been a part of organizations where naming rights have come about. People want their name over that door, and then they want to control what goes in because their name is on that door. And, it brings about a little invite. So hopefully there are specific processes in place as it relates to what the qualifications would be in order to exude those naming rights. I get that this will take off actually some of the financial obligations that the county currently pays and would shift them over to this entity. I serve on the Pinellas Community Foundation, so I am familiar with how those foundations work. I just want to make sure that this commission has the ability that if things get a little out of control, we have the ability to rein it back in, I guess is the polite way of saying it.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I'm torn a little bit because I get the reason why, Mr. Tom. I get the reason why, but I just become very concerned because sometimes in our intent to do things with the best intent, it kind of goes awry. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think it's a great idea. I'm excited about it. I really am. Naming rights, I got concerns with too, but I know we're going to come back with that, so I won't labor on that. I love the concept. I love the idea. I love it to be a community collaborative. I love the public-private partnership. This is a 3-year commitment, right?
Correct.
So the only thing that concerns me, being a grant writer for 10 years, is when that money goes away, how do you sustain that? And so I assume you have some kind of plan that continues that way. Because let's say the foundation is committed to only 3 years and that's it, that's it. And then you've got these great programs, and then you have to come back to the county and say, oh, we lost our funding, and so we need you to replace that at $250,000 or however much it is. And so I think it'll be a great success. My intuition on this one tells me it's going to be a great success. I just worry about the sustainability of it. And so I'm hoping that you have some kind of plan to ensure that if the foundation pulls out, there's somebody else that's going to step up and be a part of that.
Well, indeed, and if I could speak to both of those comments, and Commissioner Flowers, appreciate the comments there. I think you referenced the term human capital, and that's exactly what this is directed towards. If you look at those 5 categories of the mission statement: educational empowerment, educational advancement, economic empowerment, et cetera, it's really that balanced scorecard approach of providing that one-stop shop and the resources that folks need to help get out of their current situation and help get above that poverty line. So it is directly intended to provide those services, and that's the DNA of the strategic plan that we created. With regard to the long-term plan and sustainability, as Tom mentioned, this is a pilot, it's an initiative, but the vision from the start has been, again, what we see is too often a lot of these nonprofits, with the greatest of intentions, try to take on everything at once, and we know we can't even solve all those problems ourselves. And so this is an effort to try to get those groups to collaborate, to focus on their strengths, to work together. But also at a higher level, it's to coordinate the foundations. We see that the Community Foundation of Tampa Bay has stepped up and has real interest in putting money to the table to that. We want to get the other foundations engaged as well. Ideally, we'd have, all the local foundations participating. The collective impact process would establish an advisory board of the different service providers, and that would be to be developed to this plan. But theoretically, you could have the different foundations participating in that as well. And from what I know in past experience working with some of the national foundations, Ford Foundation, Kresge, Rockefeller, they don't pay attention until you're organized at the local level, until you've got your foundations on the same page and have an investment strategy. And so that is the long-term vision, to try to get, maximum collaboration, but coordinate those investments, not just from us, but from the local foundations as well, and thereby provide sustainability in the long term through a mix of public and private fundraising.
Commissioner Gerard.
Yeah, well, it's a lot. I don't know that we're supposed to be looking at this as a money saver, because it's not. But what it does is advance what the facility will be used for and what it will mean to the community. The only other way for us to do that is to hire staff on and actively manage what is essentially a community facility, or a recreation center even. And we've never wanted to do that. We don't do that. So this is just sort of naturally the next step. And it's not going to evolve to what the community wants unless we are contracting it out to somebody else. I think we'll have to keep pretty close tabs on, it does free up the staff that's working in there right now, but we're going to have to keep pretty close tabs on what's going on and the direction. And I am a little concerned about the identity part. I mean, this is our facility. But, it's kind of like Palm Harbor or one of them. I mean, they're seen as our facility, but it's their programming. And I want to make sure that that remains and it's not. But at the same time, it's a delicate balance. We want the community to have that ownership and that engagement with it.
Indeed, and thank you,
Actually,
Commissioner.
I think you've done a great job doing that, so.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And to your point, that flexibility of not adding FTEs is a key part of this recommendation to properly resource the facility with the staff that it needs. In terms of the identity, I think all parties certainly understand that if both the community and this board is not happy, it's not going to work. And there are standard termination clauses that give the county the ability to terminate the contract with or without cause. That's probably a worst case type of